Welcome to the Sheroes of Beijing Stories, the podcast series, brought to you by UN Women Nigeria and Women in Successful Careers, WISCAR. In this series, we would be sharing and celebrating stories of women's activism in Nigeria. The women in this podcast were present in the Fourth World Conference on Women, popularly tagged Beijing 1995. And their extensive and impactful experience and commitment to the empowerment of women is why we continue to celebrate them. At WISCAR, we believe in the power of a shared story in leading the next generation to aspire, grow, and contribute to nation building. We hope you will be inspired as you listen. Hi there. In this episode, Amina Oyagbola, founder and chairperson of WISCAR, will be in conversation with Madame Eugenia Abu. Eugenia Abu is one of Nigeria's most recognizable faces in media, having read the news for 17 years at NTA Network. She retired as an executive director after 35 years of meritorious service. With degrees in English, communication, and creative writing, Eugenia is a multimedia strategy expert and media consultant to many national and international organizations. These include ECOWAS, International Labour Organization, National Democratic Institute, and UN Women. She has a certificate in counseling, which she uses to encourage young people. In the last 8 years, she has mentored over 500 youths. Mrs. Abu is on the board of directors of Savannah Center for Democracy and a visiting consultant lecturer at Bingham University. She is also part of the faculty at the Center for Leadership and Strategy at the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism. In addition, she serves as a judge on the National Maltina Teachers Award, the OFAB Africa-wide Award for Media Excellence in Agricultural Reporting, and the Price Waterhouse Media Excellence Award. She's a columnist on Business Day newspaper and the author of 2 books. Enjoy this conversation.
Welcome, Madam Eugenia Abu. So great to have you here with us and with me on this podcast. I'm really looking forward to the very rich conversation that we're going to be having today. So let's get right into it. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Amina. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. The #MeToo movement was a huge social movement against sexual harassment and abuse that has had a ripple effect globally. The movement showcased the power of one voice and social media and how it can initiate huge change and transformation. Madam Eugenia Abu, how did you find your voice in gender advocacy, and what difference did the Beijing conference make to you? And what role has social media played in this matter?
Right. How did I find my voice is an interesting question, because basically, I think I've had my voice for the longest. I grew up with a very strong mother, and she practically ensured that we all felt that we were not any less than any man, as well as having a father who believed in his daughters. There were 6 of us and 2 boys. And my dad believed that a woman could do whatever she wanted, even though we come from a cultural background that didn't seem to be so. I come from a very patrilineal background. Basically, my ethnic region believes that women should be seen, not heard. So I basically grew up where women didn't do much of the talking.
Okay.
But I found that my father was very liberating and basically said to us we could, contribute to conversations in the family, and we could ask questions. And so it didn't really affect me, those things that were going on so strongly in the cultural background. So I grew up with a voice already from very young, and my father enabled me to use it and deploy it.
Fantastic. So how did that play out in terms of the whole gender advocacy space and the fight for gender equality?
Yes, over the years, I found that women tended to be more quiet on issues of injustice, and they tended to take it and be quiet and be long-suffering. I used to go with my mom to homes where husbands were using their wives as punching bags, and she would go in there and say, you can't do that. She gave you this number of children. And I learned very early on that really you could have a voice, but it could be challenging, especially if you're in an environment that made it impossible for you to say anything. And so women dumbed down over the years and didn't say much. So I learned pretty quick that it was important to deploy your voice, and more than anything else, that education helped. So a lot of the women that I met were either not working or they were not very educated, and they were economically dependent on their husbands. So it made things very difficult, because then they either couldn't leave or they couldn't speak up because they needed whatever it was that was coming from this man. So in the gender advocacy space, I found that it's important to let women, especially young women, know in my years of mentoring that your voice is stronger when you're more educated, and that you are also careful how you got involved in a relationship, because a lot of the times, as my friend Ibukun Awoshika would say, the women kind of go to school and then they make the wrong choices at the point of marriage, and that destroys everything.
Yes, it does. And also your voice is amplified when you stand with others, when you collaborate and don't try and face a challenge, on your own. It has also been said that women tend to be, and I think you touched briefly on this, women tend to be, how can I put it, unduly measured and, restrained when sharing their views or their beliefs, which, principally is born out of, the upbringing and the, how they've been brought up, to be submissive and so on. And the media also in Nigeria tends to follow suit because they do not seem to want to offend their viewers or their principals or their followers, as the case may be. So my question really is, how have you, as a media, icon, expert, personality, been able to candidly and boldly share your views on gender equality and ensure, gender-sensitive reporting, as it were?
Well, socialization, like you rightly said, plays a really big part in who we become, how we become. And becoming is a very important area of a woman's life, because as you grow older, you can learn from not just your education, but from other women who, and I consider mentoring a very big factor in fast-tracking Africa, whether it's men or women. But more importantly, women need to have mentors that they look up to who can do things, change things in ways that can negotiate those socialization issues, because it's really about negotiation. I come from a long history of a mixed Muslim and Christian background. I come from a long history of educated women who are strong. I come from a long history of very traditional women. So it's kind of a nexus between both. Our cultures there are beautiful things in them, which we should hold on to. But I don't believe that a culture is not evolving. Every culture evolves and becomes better. And we should make it that we women and the men who come with us should make it that culture that is dynamic, that is able to take on what's coming on, able to explain to the women that they do have a voice like my father did. But in terms of getting the media to see these things, it takes time. Because in the neoliberal society that we're in, money and profit matters. And women, rather than being used for their brains, are being used for their bodies. And until the media begins to understand that a woman is beyond just holding a paintbrush to sell paint, until a woman is not the one standing in front of a car to sell cars. The advertising world plays a great role in socializing younger women who think that the only thing they have to offer is either their beauty or their body. A woman's brain contributes to making a home complete. A woman's ideas contribute to making a home complete. And those who are in families will understand that when a woman is not being brought into decisions being made, that house is basically stultified.
Absolutely.
And the children will grow up not understanding the holistic nature of family setup. And we need our men to understand that. But returning to the media, I consulted for the UN Women just before Beijing, as you may have read it in the book, and my contribution. And I found that it was very difficult to get the issues of Beijing on the papers, even if we were ready to pay for it. And in some conversations and interviews I tried to push, a lot of my colleagues, in the papers, radio, and all of that, felt that all these Beijing women, they kind of trivialize it. And until the media begins to understand that a woman's role is beyond just trivialization and makeup, we're not going to go forward. Yes. And we do need the media to come along, because those role models that young women see, who are cooks rather than chief executives in movies, who are sweepers, who are house girls rather than the woman who is taking the decision, that is the way she's going to see herself. We need to see women holding the roles as they happen in life. And some of them are being dumbed down because there are women holding these positions. But when they do the scripts to show the women are not in those places. We need women to step into the light in the creative industry and be script writers as well. I've seen quite a few and they've done very well. Now, when a woman is in those positions, then she can bring her reality forward. Yes. But if the scripts are all being written by men and they're being produced by men, then there's a challenge. But there's also a challenge of, one, it's a bit narrow. It's an all-boys club in the creative industry. Women need to get in there. Women need to commit. Women need to invest. And women need to be in the forefront of those things in order for us to tell our own stories. And even tell our own stories from our own viewpoint.
Absolutely.
I mean, the more women are dropping off media, dropping off film, and complaining about gender-based violence, for example, in media houses and so on, the more they drop off, the more the world is seen from only half the eyes of the men. A woman is better able to cover rape, better able to cover children's issues, better able to cover environment. Absolutely. And when you stampede them out of that space, then you are not going to get a full picture of what's going on in the world. And that's the role of the media, interpret the world for the rest of us. Yeah. So we need to interpret it from the eyes of men and women.
Yeah, but the key issue, Madam Eugenia, is, how do we get the media to, give priority attention to these issues, from the perspective that you have highlighted? That's really, I know that as you say, UN Women is doing a lot of work. I think they have a Spotlight initiative, and they even have a particular program that's supposed to be, focused on, changing the media narrative. But how can we begin to, ensure that, the media platforms, the media houses, give the necessary attention to, these gender issues, so that, they become front and center. Just like, attention has been given to COVID-19. It's been treated as a life and death issue. But the truth is, gender equality and the gender issues are a life and death issue. If you just, cast aside 50% of your population who can, change, our prosperity, lift 100 million people out of poverty. This is something that both men and women should desire and want. What can we do? What must change?
It's a long, long journey, especially because of our patriarchal society, the socialization of men and women, as it were. And if you look very closely, there are parts of Nigeria where the women's movement is attacked by some of the patriarchal things that are going on. In some parts of Nigeria is the sister-in-law, the first daughter of the family. In the East, for example, first daughter of the family, who goes in there and tries to undo a widow. So we need a lot of education as for our women as much as for our men. Absolutely. But more importantly, when you talk about the media, ownership plays a big role. Ownership plays a big role. And not too long ago, I'm on the faculty of the Wole Soyinka Investigative Journalism Center. I went along with the coordinator to many media houses to say, can you give women a chance? Because not only are women not holding positions at the top level, they are underrepresented in the content. So you're not going to find...
And we have no economic power.
Yeah. So apart from the new women's radio that we've seen, you also hear things like, reverse to discrimination, you have a women's radio, but the men don't need a radio. They're already at the top there. And we must understand that when you are even talking about giving women affirmative action, the men complain, but it is to give a leg up to the women who are already at the bottom of the rung. Now, if you join media institutions, you'll find that for a woman to get to the top takes a lot of doing, because it is not considered that a woman should hold those positions. From the minds of the men who have owned media houses for such a long time, they don't see what you're going to contribute. And so it takes a woman 3 times as much to make it to the top of the ladder.
You were quite a special case yourself.
Well, what it is that you must understand that professionalism, hard work, and keeping your eyes open make a difference. A lot of the times, and I say this all the time because I've read Sheryl Goldberg's book, The CEO of Facebook, Leaning. A lot of the times also women tend to back out. So you are saying to a woman, can you hold this position for a while? Let Lagbaja do it, please. My children are not well. We tend to back out of the places of responsibility. I've been, pregnant and given roles, and I've not said, I'm pregnant, I can't do it. It's tiring, it's exhausting. It's not an illness. So when you begin to make it an excuse, the men pick it up when it's time to promote you. And they begin to say, that one, she's always going for school run. That one, it's hard enough. And I expect that media institutions should provide creche for the woman, so she doesn't have to run home. It's hard work to be in the media, to be able to even make yourself relevant in the media requires even harder work because the men tend to think you don't have anything in your head. So for interviews, sometimes they can pass you up and put a man to do a big interview. Meanwhile, you've been slaving in the place. So women also need to understand the dynamics of the politics of media houses. Women also need to understand how to use the media. I consulted for the NDI at some point to get women politicians to understand that you can use the media. They don't understand it. You see, when a man and a woman go somewhere and the man has the opportunity to stand beside a power base like the president, he's going to want a photograph. He's not going to be ashamed to want a photograph. He's going to give the next person standing beside him a camera to say, snap me. So he can use it to further his cause. A woman is more shy. She's likely going to be saying, people are going to be looking at me if I try to take a picture with the president. All right? So women need to be socialized, educated differently. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
I've met a young lady during the International Girl Child Day. Severally, I've given talks at the International Girl Child Day at various platforms. And I found a young girl who was a house girl. And she said she was about 16. And she spoke in Hausa. And she said what she wanted to be was a doctor. But right now she's paying her brother's school fees by working. So the house girl work, the money doesn't go to her. It goes to her parents, who use it to pay for her brother. So until the dynamics even in the family changes, my father thought I was very special. It made me confident.
Yes.
That I was a girl was irrelevant to my father. He felt that I could do a lot. And he gave me the opportunity to do that. So we need fathers to tell their daughters that they are special. That's where it starts from.
If
you don't tell them that, when they marry a bad man, they're going to believe that something is wrong with them. Meanwhile, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you, that your father chose your brother over you. It's important that fathers come along in this journey. And the media comes along, to create more spaces for women to have voices.
Fantastic. So self-confidence and self-esteem are key, and our socialization are also pertinent issues, in this fight for gender equality. I think this is, if you recall, the 2019 WISCAR conference, the theme was I do not walk alone. And that theme essentially recognized the importance of collaboration and teamwork to actualize a common goal. We also shared the same views in the Sheroes of Beijing book that you mentioned. And in that book, you did say that one of the greatest assets in building a strong women's movement was team building. Madam, how have you, as a media professional, been able to clearly articulate your views on achieving gender equality and thereby influence the change that we want to see in our world?
First of all, I'd like to congratulate WISCAR for how far you have come. We're extremely proud of the work that you have been doing, and without collaboration with UN Women and other stakeholding partners, you wouldn't be where you are today. So I'd like to say kudos to you as a start and to all your partners and supporters. I think collaboration is very important in the women's movement because I Do Not Walk Alone is so profound. It's so powerful because, women are also socialized to be silent. We learned to carry our pains solo, and that's not going to help anyone. With the rise of gender-based violence across the world today, it's critical that women understand that you need to partner with people, you need to share your pain for you to move forward. But back to the question of how gender advocacy is important for how we move forward and how we're able to make changes in the media. I found a lot of the times when I was executive director of programs in NTA and severally in the other roles that I played in NTA over the years, that when you sent a cameraman out to get views on many things, for example, the Vox Pops, Vox Populi, Vox Dei, go and find out what people think about people wearing earrings or the fashion of today, or more serious things like gas. Go and find out what's the challenge, I cook a lot, so I understand that those little things at the knob of the gas can be very challenging in the way they're put. And that's a woman's issue a lot of the times. And you send somebody out to go and say, go and find out from women how they are coping with putting on the gas from the back of their house and all of that. The men tend to go out there, most of the cameramen and reporters, and come back with voices of men, no matter the issues. And so you don't see a woman contributing to, because they've come to the conclusion that petroleum doesn't concern a woman. Why should you interview her? If there's no fuel in the country, you should just talk to a man. Meanwhile, women are driving. The reality is that there are women who are going through the same problems. And you should give equal basis to the voices, as it were. The perspectives are different.
Absolutely.
And then when it concerns a woman, why are you interviewing men? You come back, I used to ask them, why are all the women dead on the street when you went out there to do this Vox Pop? So in terms of being able to lend your voice, you find that a lot of people who are in the media tend to think it's okay not to have a representation. So sometimes you see, even when they put a woman, it's tokenism. So they throw in one woman to make a random comment. And sometimes they pick a woman who doesn't know anything about it to make her even look more silly, instead of actually going out to seek for somebody who understands it. Content is as important as representation in the media. Yes. So the content makes a difference depending on which way you put it. It's also political. So you go out there and you interview people about politics. And then after talking to men who are educated about how the political parties are operating, you talk to one kose seller who is a woman, who doesn't even know the difference between one political party and another. And then you put that there as a representation of women.
And the impact of that is huge. The negative impact.
You have skewed the books, because what you're doing is putting out information that's untrue.
Yes.
That woman does not represent the political woman who understands what she's doing. She knows how to make kose. That's her art. But she doesn't care about politics. Then you choose to ask her. And you bring back the stories like that where she's going, well, I don't know what they're doing even, Seth. That's it. And then the men get to say, you see, the political party in Nigeria, when it's time to appoint somebody, they're going to be looking for one of those men.
Absolutely.
Because the women have been put out to look like they don't know what they're doing.
That's part of the narrative that we were talking about.
Absolutely. As Newton will say, do not judge a fish and a snake. Or, I don't remember what animal. Don't judge them with the same liver. You cannot ask a fish and an animal that can climb a tree to compete, because you know that the fish can't climb a tree. So when you are talking to women who should know, you are talking to women. So it's some kind of socialization also in the media to kind of put the women aside and interview a woman who has not contributed much to the matter.
And put them down and belittle them.
Yeah, in a lot of instances. So what do I do? While I was in the media, I tried to ensure that this happens. I'm a copious writer in my various columns about how to treat women. So I've spent a lot of time doing that. And I've joined a lot of opportunities to speak to men and women about how we can make things better and how we can give equal spaces to each other. It's critical. And then I counsel in churches. So I basically talk to men who think their wives are their punching bags a lot of the time. It's tragedy, but we can do much about it.
That's a whole subject all on its own.
Yes.
Madam, let's take a short break right now to listen to one of the 12 critical areas for action and concern from the Beijing Platform for Action, and we'll be right back. So please stay with us.
The 1995 Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action flagged 12 key areas where urgent action was needed to ensure greater equality and opportunities for women and men, girls and boys. It also laid out concrete ways for countries to bring about change. UN Women works with governments and partners to ensure such change is real for women and girls around the world. Critical area of concern number 3, women and health. Women need to be healthy in order to realize their full potential. This includes proper nutrition, sexual and reproductive rights, and mental health, as well as freedom from violence. UN Women advocates for states to better coordinate the provision of health services for women and girls, including for survivors of violence, and supports non-governmental partners providing essential services. We work to end practices that bring danger to women and girls, including child marriage, female genital cutting, dietary restrictions, and others. We act to ensure that women's needs are met during medical humanitarian crises and support and empower women living with HIV and AIDS.
And that was one of the critical areas of concern from Beijing Platform for Action. Welcome back, Madam Eugenia. And for our viewers, I'm in conversation with Madam Eugenia Abu, who is a media icon that we're all very, very familiar with. And moving on to the book, Sheroes of Beijing, which you were also a contributor as an author to. You expressed the importance of women learning from the experiences of their forebears. Indeed, intergenerational learning, exchange and transfer was part of the motivation behind the mentorship program deployed by UN Women and WISCAR. How do you think media houses can step in to bridge the gap by documenting historical events in the women's movement towards achieving gender equality, and of course to better enable the younger generation to learn and carry the movement forward in their own activism?
Thank you very much for having me. I was very honored to be amongst the Beijing mentors in the intergenerational activities that were carried out by WISCAR and supported by UN Women. And I did have quite an exciting mentee, Amina Oyagbola, who won the 2017 Kamala Dumor BBC Prize Award.
Fantastic.
Very proud of her. She was very eager to learn, and we learned from each other. What I would like to say concerning the intergenerational space is that I was very lucky when I retired from active public service to go into the private sector after 35 years of serving, to go to Malta, the United Nations Institute of Aging. And very few people know that it exists. The United Nations Institute of Aging had us in for 2 weeks for policy dialogue. I thought it was very exciting for me to find out that women age differently from men. And also to find out that if you spent a lot of your life with an older woman, it added 7 years to your life.
Amazing.
So from that, yes, and it's scientifically proven. Now, from that point of view is where I would like to take this conversation concerning intergenerational space and having to get the media to document. In terms of documenting, Nigeria is very poor when it comes to archival matters, when it comes to historical matters. And you would recall that when Nigeria turned, I think it was 50, as a nation, we had to buy a lot of our clips from the BBC. Very sad.
Very, very sad.
Very sad. And that means, therefore, that we're not documenting. Generally, as a people, we're not documenting. We're not archiving. We're not putting our history together. And then, of course, we went on then to remove history from our school curricula.
So how do we tell our own stories, you know?
Absolutely. So you have people like Gambo Sawaba, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, Queen Moton, you know, and Inikbi, who was buried alive in Igala land where I come from in order to save her people. We have these heroines, and our children don't know who they are. And our younger women don't know who they are. They have no idea what conversation you are having when you start talking about these people.
Very sad.
First and foremost, in terms of historical antecedents, I think it's critical that the younger generation should be hungry to know. That's number one. Number two, I think the older generation should be interested in documenting. I'm a writer. Not everybody is given to write. You had a stellar career in a very, very, very big organization. And I would like to see what you have to say if you had a book. And so I'm throwing it out there that we're looking towards Amina Oyagbola writing a book about what it takes to lead. I am writing my own books. I have 2, and I'm writing 2 now, in order to be able to give something back to these young women who have no clue in a lot of ways, not because they are not trying, but because the world today and the kind of media we have is quick, on the run, and it's not deep. So you have all kinds of technological things that are there, but they don't have those historical antecedents that you require. So the media needs to be more conscious about putting out the stories of women who have done well in order to socialize our young girls. There was a young lady who started writing a book about all the women and men who have done well in the past and put it in little books for children in primary school, because you really do need to catch them young. And this is a story I like to tell, and I think it's important for the question that you asked. I teach a boot camp for the last 13 years of young children between the ages of 7 and 14. What schools don't teach them, relationship building, kindness, charity, understanding each other, learning to cook, the things schools don't teach them. And we had an 11-year-old who came in, a young man, 11. And we usually have an icebreaker. So we say to whoever you are to pick a name. And it can't be your cousin with whom you came to the boot camp. It's a week long. We want you for the first day to sit with someone you don't know. And he picked out this young lady's name. She was 9. And these were the words that came out of his mouth. I don't want to sit beside her. I don't like her. I don't like her religion. I don't like her tribe. I don't like the way she's dressed. I was stupefied.
Stunned.
Totally stunned. Like what? And these are socializations from home.
Yes.
These are the things his parents are telling him.
That's where it starts.
And that's where it starts. His parents are telling him that. And so, I called them and I said, come and take him away. We don't encourage this kind of ethnic divide here. You cannot say you don't like her religion, you don't like her tribe. You are 11. What do you even know about anybody's tribe? And he reduced the girl to tears for nearly an hour. We had to do a lot of loving and, talking, and it was ridiculous.
It's shocking,
but this is how it is. That's what happened. I can't get over it. Even now, several years later, I get goosebumps when I think about it. How do we document these things? We're not writing enough. As a people, we're neither reading nor writing enough. There are people who are carrying the stories of our lives in their hands, and they're not writing. So 1, we need to get corporate bodies to support the writing of historical books about women who have made their mark. We need to get the media organizations to come along with us to create the spaces to tell the stories of women who have made their mark. We need women themselves who can afford it to begin to write, and those who cannot afford it to dictate the books and let those who can afford it support it. Our young women need to hear the stories of our lives.
Well, what you've said is just absolutely amazing. Honestly, you've thrown a huge challenge, on the table. The challenge for all of us as individuals to download what is in our heads and in our hearts, to share our stories and our experiences, to ensure that knowledge transfer takes place. And the second challenge you've thrown on the table is the challenge to, private sector organizations, public sector organizations, civil society, to all, come behind, the documentation of the history, very rich history of our cultures, our religions, our traditions, our practices, as a nation. It's a huge challenge, but this is the year, the International Women's theme for this year is I Choose to Challenge, and you've thrown a huge challenge, Madam Eugenia. It's been an absolute, pleasure, just having this brief chat with you on this podcast today. I feel really privileged and honored to have had the opportunity to share this platform with you. I'd just like us to conclude with one final question, if you will permit me. The saying goes that women hold up half the sky. Women have so much, as you have said, to contribute to nation building and should be enabled and given an equal access and equal opportunity to thrive. Can you, in closing this podcast, please share with our listeners your views on this issue and why
Indeed,
diversity and inclusion, matters, why it's important? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, the world is going towards diversity and inclusion, and every time you hear about financial inclusion and all kinds of inclusion, And if we are going towards that way, because we know that economically is the best thing to do, socially it is the best thing to do. Nations are broken because they didn't carry their women along. I can tell you for free. If you gave a woman an opportunity to go to war and an opportunity to stay at peace, the woman will choose stay at peace, because at the end of the day, when there's a war, the woman holds the short end of the stick.
Absolutely.
She's left at home with her children. There's no food. She's the one running helter-skelter. And there have been quite a number of initiatives to get women involved in humanitarian issues because they understand better. There are so many things that women do better. You know, humanitarian issues involve how to care for people who are broken. You need a woman. You need women to put a voice in there. I see the Murtala Mohammed Foundation is involved in women who have been trafficked and brought back, women from the Boko Haram who have been brought back. I see them involved in psychological profiling and managing them. That's a huge issue. Yes. Women tend to do better in those areas. A woman will not tell you she has been raped. She's not going to talk to a man who has come and said, so how did it go? How did it go? A woman is not going to talk to you, but she will talk to another woman because she believes another woman understands. Women hold half the sky. Policymakers, governments, non-governmental organizations should remember that if we have such a huge population of women, that's an economic prize, free, that you should leverage on. Again, it's also a social prize that you should leverage on. And a nation that runs with one of its legs and leaves the other leg behind cannot run very far. Nigeria should understand that we have such strong, brilliant women. Let's deploy them. Absolutely. In areas where we see that the men are not doing well, and in areas where even there are no people, the first choice should be a woman. A lot of organizations in Nigeria have never had a woman chief executive, and it doesn't bother us. Doesn't make any sense. And there are more women in the organization than there are men, and you keep bringing a man to head it. It's not just language or cheap talk. I think women have what it takes, and a nation and the world should carry their women along. They hold half the sky. On a final note, there's a book by Mrs. Olumide Ojo. She wrote a book called The Pressure Cooker, How to Balance Your Life and Balance Your Work. I think it's a phenomenal book, and that's the kind of book that you should be writing. On a final note, The Pressure Cooker by Olumide Ojo.
No pressure, no pressure at all. No
Let's
pressure.
get the books out there. Let's tell the men and women who are holding positions in Nigeria and our leadership that women matter. They should carry them along. They make a difference. They socialize the world. They hold our homes together. We need them to lead.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Madam Eugenia Abu. It has been so delightful. Thank you so much, for being part of co-authoring this book with the other 20 plus amazing women of Nigeria, the Sheroes of Beijing. I'm sure by the time we release this book, most people will not be able to resist getting their hands on it. Thank you very much also for being on this podcast. Stay well and continue to do what you do best and continue looking good. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sheroes of Beijing podcast series. For more insights, follow us up across our social media handles. Follow UN Women on Twitter at UN Women Nigeria. Follow WISCAR on Instagram at WISCARNG and WISCAR Nigeria on Facebook and LinkedIn, or at Africa Business Radio.